Euthia is a sprawling high fantasy RPG. Pick a hero, explore the land, kill some monsters, upgrade your hero, buy some cool stuff too. Rinse and repeat, some elementals are involved too. Eventually kill a dragon, maybe in some scenarios. Euthia, Torment of Resurrection. Euthia. Old school fantasy RPGs are the name of the game here. So you go ahead and pick a character, you explore the map, kill monsters, level up your character, upgrade your character, and of course, grab some loot. Okay, so this game is utterly gigantic, but it's not too hard to learn, so let's go over a quick how to play. To win, you just want the most reputation, which is like points in this game, and you want to get the most of that before the game ends, which is after all of your scenarios rounds finish. To get this reputation, you want to go around the map right here with your adventure, walking, exploring new locations, and then killing monsters and getting loot, all that fantasy good stuff. Every turn you can just do as many actions as you want on your player board, which means most of the time just 3 actions. Each one of those tokens is either a move, where you just move that amount, or the action on it, like here you spend this token to trade on the area you're on. But really, this is a game all about fighting monsters, so you definitely have to be using this token to fight a lot, which means you just fight the monster on your space it's battling time. You flip a monster, it's controlled by your opponent, and it rolls dice to see what type of damage it does. You, the hero, takes damage, then you roll, see what that number means for your weapon, and then do damage back to the monster. This is all altered a bit by 2 key things, these cool looking stones called guard tokens and these fist looking cards. The guard tokens are like rerolls. Either monster or hero can spend their own guards to reroll each other's dice, and then you add a +2 or -2 on top of that. The fist cards are abilities that the monster can use to help them, like adding to their damage. If you kill that monster, you get the rewards on the back of the card, including the stuff on the space you killed it on. Yeah, that can be quite a bit of stuff. You put your tokens on that space, meaning you liberated it, and now you can do that space's thing, like mining at the place you liberated. One more thing, upgrading your hero, yeah. Anytime you go to shop, you can buy all sorts of awesome items, including health pots, which you can just chug during combat. But you can also train your hero. This is the game's leveling up thing, where you can unlock character-specific items and abilities based off reputation, which, come on, basically that's like the EXP in a video game. You take 1 tile from each milestone, so here we would choose to just take this one, and now we can slot it into the right place on the board. Same thing goes for buying items, like this armor that would increase your max health, and that just fills in this slot here. And that is the bare bones of Euthia. Just walk around the map, killing monsters, upgrading your characters. Each of your turns, you're doing a bunch of actions, and then once you're out of actions, you pass your turn. Once your opponents pass their turn, well, you're on to the next round. Just remember, as that end game comes about, end game scoring takes into account what tokens you have on the board, and also your upgraded stuff on your player board here. Now onto the pros of Euthia. This is big, but the game just doesn't slouch with the graphic design, even on this box. Oh my god, that's big. What is inside this box is quality components. And here we want to point out we have this legendary collection 2 box. Oh, it's just as big. This is just gonna start kicking off the amazing storage solutions that this game has. Like, there's even storage containers for the cardboard pieces, and as you've been seeing this whole time, these S-tier cardboard towers to store all these tiles. Tiles just slot in. There's a notch for your finger if you want to grab tiles from the bottom. Discards go on the top, and it closes with a lid as it's kept tight by these awesome torches. It's just great feeling cardboard. Like, I'm throwing this up and down, and no worry about it all coming loose. You got 6 of these towers, and they all hold 3 stacks of tiles, so no more tiles being everywhere in bags. Oh, the tiles are great quality too. Even this massive tower has its own slot on the sideboard to showcase tiles. Man, this feels so good to use. And okay, minis. Yeah, there's minis in this insert, and we really wish more games came with these. Minis with a black washed finish. Wow, just look at that finish with the detail. Just incredible right out of the box. This just makes the characters look so gritty as they move across these detailed landscapes. There's also the finished dragon, this golem, and even the griffin to trample around with. Oh, and then there's even these painted elementals, but we didn't actually get a chance to play with those yet since they're in later scenarios. You got more bling like these custom bags to store all your map tiles. There's even unique custom dice for each character. And then there's metal coins. Metal coins. Now for the non-bling stuff, this stuff's really good too. Like you got these thick player boards with your thick hero tiles. Cards feel good, but we got sleeves included in our legendary 2 box. And these player aids are big to easily handle and read. This game just looks extremely polished to get you in that mood for that gritty, traversing RPG. Now to the gameplay pros. This game totally has that choose your character vibe with the 6 asymmetrical heroes. There's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they all have gameplay that feels very true to their unique art going on. When you look at these player boards, you'll notice at a glance that they just have different slots locked. And then this gets flushed out by your character's tiles. All these upgradable tiles for one character that you'll be getting throughout the game. At the beginning of the game, characters have different things, like maybe you'll start with the rusty sword. Or if you're playing this spellcaster, Tertiary, then you'll start out with 3 things. You'll have 2 spells and 1 weapon. Like really, if you look down this player sheet that shows all your character's specific upgrades, they all just have differing specialties. Drawl, the buff warrior gym rat dude, just like to charge across the map and rage. And eventually, he'll be going into town intimidating his way into getting better deals on items. If we go back to Tertiary, she wants to eventually get a book of power to charge up after killing monsters. She'll be getting ancient knowledge to give herself more actions, eventually getting to launch huge ice storms for tons of damage. High fantasy RPG, right? This game's archetypes range from this thief who can eventually walk through enemies to this gnome right here, Scolder, who doesn't have normal Gar tokens to reroll, but has something called these Dwart tokens. These are unique to him that when you spend them, you get to tick up this die. And as it goes higher and higher, you're gonna get more and more punished at the end of the round. Or you could play as this guy, this fiery mage, Melder. And this guy is like the Lord of Portals. You get to be the Lord of Portals, and then eventually you can use that to just keep teleporting across the map. Go portal here to portal there. That's the Lord of Portals. So you have your fresh character, and now you're off to explore this land of Euthia. And Euthia's land looks like something you'd find in a fantasy video game RPG, which is exactly what this game is trying to be. As you walk around the map, there's interest everywhere, from people asking you for quests to fulfill, all sorts of varied monsters holding mines and trading posts hostage, and even strong elementals influencing the land. So while the game has little to no flavor text on the huge amount of cards, tiles, and boards, the land has character as you unravel what's outside of your little starting church. And there's also just so many types of things to find. There's 3 types of rewards for mining different spaces. Look, there's 3 types of treasures as well. Oh, and you can return to the friendly church to heal, or buy health pots from some friendly priest, I'm assuming. Anyways, the further you get from the church, the more likely you are to see scarier tier 2 and the really strong tier 3 monsters, with better rewards. Let's talk about these elementals that we brought up. Now, these are a really distinct part of Euthia that add flavor to the map because every time you go next to one, it's going to influence what you do. So this earth elemental one will give you a +2 to your die rolls when you're next to it. Or there's this air one, which will straight up flip one of your dice over when fighting next to it. So that slows down combat. Or there's this water one that heals you. So it's like a healing area on the map. As you go next to it, you heal 2 health. And then there's a fire one that damages you. These really add flavor to the map as you're walking across it, and also allow for these essences to be in the game, which really start to infuse your character with all this RPG strong goodness. One of the quickest jumps in the game comes from getting these. They're not really like abilities, but more like bonuses you can tack onto your turn or action. To get the essences, you just have to go to an elemental to confront it, and if you get the right die roll, you can walk away pretty with an essence from there. Once you have these though, the game starts accelerating, as now you can once per turn +8 any of your rolls. Now you can have a guaranteed strong combat round with this up your sleeve. If you can grab all the essences, they boost you with fire plus 3 damage on any attack, then heal for 4 health at any time, and then just reduce the damage to just rolling 1 die with the air. So our character is just getting more and more essences as we slowly reveal this map of Euthia. But remember, you're leveling up too, and we want to praise this game's leveling system and how it makes movement on the board feel very strategic. See, when you level up in this game, it's not just like, whoopee, I leveled up, I just get all my stuff. No, it's not quite like that. Instead, you don't get anything, but you have to go all the way to a trading post, and then you pay 1 gold, and then you have access to everything you've leveled up to at that point. And wow, this is just a huge influx of tiles to pick from now. This always begs the question of really wanting to pace how you go to town, as maybe you want to hang out fighting a little bit more before you spend the action to actually trade and start upgrading. You don't want to wait forever though, because many of the abilities are crucial to your character, like getting the Lord of Portals to teleport, or even just buying a good weapon to replace your shoddy starting one. This leads us perfectly into the progression of Euthia, which we consider to be this game's strongest pool. See, the progression in this game is fast. You can start upgrading your character as early as after the first fight. You can get your new ability, maybe I can start charging across the map now, and then you can go into town to start spending money to grab some cool equipment. Just got a wooden shield right here. Actually, you may have seen there's 3 columns for buying goods here, and that's because you can get access to better trading posts. Eventually, you'll get access to these Dragon Slayer tiles once you liberate this Dragon Slayer tower space. The stuff you can buy here is just so cool, and much stronger, if you can afford it, that is. Going here is just good anyways, since the healing bonus you get from going here is better. You can even straight up buy the re-rolling fuel, the GAR tokens in this Dragon Slayer tower, and now you can always go back to this tower whenever you run low on those. Eventually, you'll just have all these cool items to raise your character's max health, to survive longer fights with enemies, and you can even equip these with gems, which are like mini essences, but able to be slotted into items. Money is really king in this game, as you can unlock so many new slots on your board over time, or just pay essences to do it, and you'll have access to more armor spaces and more ability spaces. These upgrades are going to make the combat evolve from you just having a simple dice chuck with a reroll from the Scar token if you want to eventually so many tiles on your player board to have decisions like, oh, should I use this potion? Maybe I should use this essence. Maybe I'll use a gem here. Maybe I'll cast a spell there. Maybe I'll launch a first strike there. The list just goes on and on. You do just start out with this measly, sucky sword that you do 3 damage if you're really lucky. And then as a couple hours go on, you'll just find yourself with you're like a level 70 character in a game where you're just flipping things left and right. Maybe you have that, and then you have that, and you go from a guaranteed 5 damage a round. Guaranteed. And then if you throw in this lizard sling that you have and this fire essence, that's 12 damage a round. You just went from doing 3 damage a round, if you're lucky, to guaranteed 12 damage. Eventually, you'll take on stronger and stronger monsters as you clear the map and the boundaries get explored. You'll go from bats to trolls, that has double the health, and eventually you'll get to this Naga monstrosity that does 4 damage guaranteed, and it looks really scary. And in some scenarios, there'll be dragons to fight later on too. The progression can just have you asking yourself, how much longer can I stay out next time before I need to go rest in town? How will my new weapon fare in the next attack? Can I start one-shotting the weaker boar monsters that have been causing me trouble? Because Euthia has so many different abilities and items in this dense world, you feel motivated to see how good your character can become. But this is still a board game, so Euthia's progression is in this system of turns that we also have to commend. It feels tight. Euthia's really putting the strategy in strategic RPG here. See, you have this big board, this map, and you have kind of an infinite amount of options every turn with it, but you only have finite movement. So you have to really start thinking about how you want to plan your movement, especially if you want to go back to town to upgrade and shop. Oh, but then hold on, you can even get upgraded movement. You can buy things or upgrade things to get you even more movement, and that's going to expand your options you can do every single turn. So on your turn, it can sometimes feel like the entire map is open to you if you portal correctly. Or maybe you can walk across some water elementals on the way to your next fight to heal you up so you don't have to go back to town. And again, shopping is that huge turning point for your character, where you just might want to sit there and count your money and just look at what the hell you want to upgrade and buy with all these tiles that are instantly available to you. It's also an amazing influx of money from treasure that you just want to sell, or some stuff that you've mined and don't need. You've seen these dice by now, and yes, these dice are going to be rolled for every single combat. But don't worry, Euthia is filled with luck mitigation, and this is where the strategy starts to come in again. You can really get out of unlucky rolls by just preparing your player board appropriately, where you can just have so many abilities stacked on here that it doesn't really matter what you roll anymore. The guard tokens ensure rerolls and automatically +2 or -2 to anyone's roll, yes, even the monsters. So they're never bad to use and you won't just get unfairly one-shot and die. The essences and gems are replenished every turn and are always helpful. To fall even more in line with that strategic RPG idea, you even know expected health and damage here and what your rewards for combat will be. Okay, as we wrap this up, we want to say this game has great replayability. You got these 6 heroes that, again, don't play the same. And if you're playing a new hero, well, you're going to spend a lot of time attached to reading their character aid because, yeah, you really want to plan accordingly to what they can be getting later on. But then the map is not the same either. Tiles will be differently flipped every game. And that will just make the world feel a lot different. Elementals will influence different tiles around them. Trading posts will spawn differently. There'll be different treasure placement. And even portals. Portal placement is a huge deal as portals from across the map? Wow, that's really going to allow for a lot of mobility, but sometimes that doesn't happen. The game is just filled to the brim with stacks of tiles and cards, and we haven't found too many repeats. There's at least 12 different monsters for each tier if you include the game's elite monsters. There's anything from potions to jewelry to armor to sidearms to scrolls in the shop, and even special tiles for certain scenarios. Now we haven't gotten to use these in game yet, but dang do they look cool for these scenarios. Yep, so we haven't talked about this much yet, but this game has 11 scenarios if you include the 3 elemental scenarios in the side booklet. Now we haven't tried all of these, but we haven't read any complete 180s from the progression idea. You're still ramping up your character throughout the game. These scenarios will let you tweak your time length a bit, and just tend to add flavor to the map with some slight rule implementation. There's anything from the intro one to kill tier 2 monsters like a bounty hunter, to then having a golem constantly transform the map and add its own tiles, all the way to the dragon ones, where endgame has everyone working together to kill a dragon before it kills everyone. To start wrapping up the pros, the gameplay of Euthia meets the theme decently well to create some pretty cool stories. And this is impressive for a game without flavor text to still feel like you're in some type of mystical land. We agreed that we could write a short fantasy RPG story on what happened in our games. Let's say your hero, Skolder, starts at the church, makes some initial forays into the wilderness, dies a couple times, but learns and gets stronger. He frees some towns from boars and eventually downs a cyclops. And the abilities just keep coming on, he's getting better. Skolder confronts huge elementals to permanently transform him. Eventually, the great dragon Feroga comes to burn down the land, but he's ready. He heals back up at the church, and look how far he's come that a simple health pot barely means anything to increase his health. He goes into the final battle, eager to get the last hit to get the most reputation, with a mighty heavy crossbow and battle hammer backed up with countless magical essences. Now for the cons of Euthia. First off, we know there's a lot of stuff in this game, and there's even these multiple character aids, but learning the game, overall actually, it just feels too slow. When you first open the box, you can just be really lost on what to do because there's just so much stuff and you're supposed to open all of it. A suggestion on how to organize them would be really nice, because you just cannot use all the tokens for your first game, and we had to do some digging to realize that we should probably organize all the hero tokens by color first. Yeah, it's good. The first scenario is simple, which is good, but this would have just been the perfect opportunity to provide a tutorial with all of its extra space there. The game is decently sandboxy, and newcomers can just get confused on what all the constant differing tiles, cards, and even elementals mean, since none of them have substantial text written on them. Oh, God. Remember when we kept comparing this to like a video game? Well, see, video games with a similar scope perhaps have that quick help feature where you can hover your hand over something and that'll explain what it is. Like that. But this being a board game doesn't have that, and it doesn't have a lot of text on its things anyway. So let's say we have this 4-leaf clover. Okay, what does that mean? Man, that hovering over quick help thing is sorely missed here. There is an included appendix, which is nice to explain the cards and tiles, but it doesn't do enough. We wish there was something included to explain more parts on the game when we had confusion, like how confronting elementals really worked, or how solo combat worked. The game has these 5 different double-sided reference cards to help you. Yeah, 5 different double-sided big cards is just an utter pain to flip back and forth with a game with already so many components and a big character aid. Why not just have these reference cards just all be this size, this big, so you don't have to manage with something kind of small given the scope of the game? We kept getting caught up on the flow of combat, especially with all these things being jammed packed onto this aid. A simple reference on this combat section would help. With a game this big, with so many different items and abilities and even scenarios, there really needs to be a FAQ. So, let's just. Okay, here we go. This is just a couple of them. Can you move after combat? Yes. Can you use guard tokens on monsters? Yes. Is confronting elementals an action? No. Is using essence using it up? No, it's just flipping it over. Oh, and then also, the max amount of inventory you can ever have is 3. Even just a sheet that is taken from the appendix that explains all the different tiles would be nice, because there's just so many different tiles that don't explain themselves clearly. You don't really know what an elite monster layer is, or the tier 2 of treasure, or what all these different quest people actually are called. Now onto the nitpicks, and as you can see here, this game has a lot of stuff. Oh my god, look at that unboxing experience.
This is all just tokens? What the heck? Oh, there's more tokens, sorry.
So that's okay for what this game is trying to be, but it had that thing where it was shooting out some unnecessary things at us, and that's where the nitpicks come in. How about for health tokens? Every single player has their own box of health tokens to use for monsters they're fighting. Well, you're typically only ever fighting one monster at a time, so why not have one universal set of health tokens instead of having that copied 6 times? Or maybe there's no need to have a monster set of dice because you can just use the hero ones instead. Or the useless token showcase, yay! These are things that don't do anything but serve as brief reminders during your turn, of which you're certain to remember, like, oh, you have 1 movement point left, or, oh, look, you're next to an air elemental. Okay, and then while not exactly fiddly, this is more like a waste of space, this round tracker board. For all the space it's taking up, it doesn't even go past 50 VP, which is something you'll frequently overshoot during endgame scoring. This could easily be half the size. Okay, so enough nitpicking on the components. I mean, this much stuff is bound to be a little polarizing anyways, so let's just get to the gameplay ones. And we want to talk about the encounters, or, I mean, they give you quests, so let's just call them quest cards. And they have like this question mark on them. Wait, question mark? Wait, a question mark? That kind of looks like a... Anyways, this game is kind of open world, but also still a board game, so movement is limited. Moving for quests can sometimes not be worth it at all. To even unlock the chance to do a quest, you have to walk on the space to see what the card is, and then walk away to fulfill it, and then walk all the way back. That type of action asking is usually not worth it in a board game, whereas in a video game, you could just hold W, and you would eventually fulfill a quest. Like, how about this subpar one, where every hero who happened to liberate mining hexes just gets a payout. So even if you fulfilled it yourself, do you really want to walk over to it to give your opponent 2 gold for free? These quests are in an interesting space because, well, where they spawn on the board is random because of the map flipping. And then when you get them, well, they do follow a certain theme, but their specific asks and rewards are still random. So sometimes they can be really good for you and add some cool flavor. But sometimes they can just kind of be whatever. At their best, you can just hire some mercenaries, give them some leather armor, and they'll go kill a monster for you. Or say you have this lump of coal or whatever this black thing is, and you just give it to this blacksmith who happens to be in your walking path, and hey, it's not an action to sell it to him, so you just get that reward. Oh, and then of course, when you fulfill a quest, you put your marker down, and you also get the quest card, which means more points late game. These are more aptly named side quests, instead of something you're trying to do as a plan A or B. If they line up with your path and you happen to upgrade to lots of extra movement, they can be nice. It's just that for all these stacks of cards, you're not thinking about them much because of all the other things on the board you want to do. Essentially, lots of cards for all the diverse quests in the game, and they might not see that much use if you're optimizing movement. We'll settle that they should have at least added a name to the location and some flavor text with maybe an NPC name to add some flavor. Okay, let's talk about the dynamic between players. It can feel kind of weird because it's being thinly stretched between cooperative and competitive. Competitive because you want to maximize your score, your reputation to win the game, but also frequently cooperative because you can never attack each other and then you can just use each other's spaces by paying them 1 gold, which is basically nothing mid to late game. There's at least 4 of the scenarios that at the end of the game, you're just teaming up together to fight against a big boss. So you want to not screw over your potential teammates later. And then it also says when you win that fight, you beat the big boss, everyone gets 10 reputation. So if everyone's getting 10 points in a competitive game, what is that even doing? It's not doing anything. Point scoring is hard to calculate because it's really influenced by the ending tokens on the board. So if you don't clearly know who is ahead, it can be tricky to decide who to screw over with these cards, the silver and gold ones. These add another layer of management. You want to handle them to kill opponents. You get points when you kill them, and everyone just revives after dying. Yet we can't help but feel that for a game with progression as its first and foremost theme, these fist cards are so brutal when timed correctly. And you can even choose to take control of monsters sometimes in multiplayer. Remember, dying isn't game losing, but you do lose your combat action and are forced to revive somewhere else, and that kinda sucks. For the game asking you to keep track of so many tile abilities already, then stacking this hand of cards on top of that, perhaps more map interaction and then more text on each monster would have been the way to go. This weirdness really struck us in the Golem scenario, where your team achieves its end goal faster by using very hurtful gold cards on each other. So screwing each other over for everyone to ultimately win. And here we will reveal that Euthia plays best as a solo game, and that should come as no surprise with the minimal interaction and tense player boards. So you likely won't be too concerned about these interactive nitpicks, and look, the game is even just telling you to chill out and think of things more like a high score with this achievement sheet. Who can get the most gold and have Nobleman achievement unlocked, right? Or who can place the most type of gem? Now let's talk about the actual world of Euthia. See, we mentioned how these quests are pretty lacking in story, and let's get to these characters that are mechanically fleshed out, but there's basically no text for them at all. This hit us hard for Skolder, who has these character names and these abilities like Gumrun's Path and Morgort's Fate. Who are these people? Who's Morgort and why should we care about his fate? I'm so confused. There's also this lore and art booklet included, which looks absolutely fantastic, and it has some flavor on the dangerous tone of the land of Euthia. But the stories don't delve into the characters or villains much. We honestly expected some detail on the monsters you fight, or even just some more on the dragon that is kind of the endgame boss, right? Again, this lore is not necessary for a game. There's already so much attention put into detail with the presentation here, but it just feels like a missed opportunity because this game is just trying to go big anyways. Let's get a little bit on time length. This game runs long, but it actually thrives on being long, so you can immerse yourself in this world and also all the components here. But this box says 30 minutes to 120 minutes per player. Now, the 30 minutes per player is kind of misleading because the 30 minutes per player is for the first scenario, which is like a demo of the game. You really want to be playing at least the hour plus scenarios to get a true sense of the progression of Euthia. Also, take that time and multiply it by 1.5 or even 2 times if you're a bit of a thinker, because Euthia has a lot of decisions. There's just a lot to consider every turn with all the components and map paths. If you want to factor in setup and takedown, that's adding at least 30 minutes even with the legendary 2-box organizers. There is a definite round end so things don't drag, and there is some sense of urgency. A good estimate, especially if you're just starting off, is at least 4 hours for a 2-player game. Then last little bit of nitpicks, we found a typo here on the Scolder reputation requirements. There we go, fixed it. Oh, and then you can't really see this blinged out version of Shi's intervention when it's on the 0 side that well. This might as well be blank. So now it's time for a tentative score on Euthia. We haven't played all the scenarios enough to really know about balance, and also we don't know if there's more Kickstarter changes, so we're just gonna critically evaluate what we've played so far, what we have here, and from that, Euthia is gonna get a 8 out of 10. It is tentatively great. One thing that just kept getting dialed in our heads while we played, wow, that's like something I found in a video game before. Right from the art, the upgrade slots, the relatively speedy encounter combats, and just bursting into town with tons of wares to sell, it's that fantasy RPG. You can maybe hear those fantasy RPG sounds of click as you insert gems into headgear, the cinematic impacts as you rush past elementals, and those level up noises when you train your character. There's constant management of movement, tapping abilities, consuming limited scrolls or potions, rearranging your items to sell, and there's that looming endgame objective. But consequences. There's some consequences of porting such a big, sweeping fantasy RPG to your table. See, you typically only fight just once a round, so the game's maybe not as bloody as you might think. And also the fighting might not be too in-depth, where at the end of the day, even though you have potions and first strike and different items, you're still rolling dice, and stuff is usually some type of dice modifier. Then maybe these quests aren't as flavorful as you would like, and it just adds to all of these cards here. It's a lot of things, and yeah, maybe you do just want it to be in a computer after all. It's just clear that Euthia has a lot of just everything when it comes to components. Setup and takedown are an absolute monster, and even though there's a cool storage boxes that is this S tier idea, there's still no full insert, and unique map preparation for each game is always a bit of a shuffle. Like, remember these little gems? This would all be animated in a video game, but now you're actually touching tiny jewelry as you pick them up and flip them over. Same thing goes with the essence. Your character boards can get filled with all sorts of tiles, and then that means there's, well, at least 6 sorts of 9 different generic tile stacks, and then there's the shopping tiles there, and there's your character tiles too. Oh, thank God there's an organizer in this game. Alright, otherwise I think I'll lose my mind making this review. Even the mini game of fighting is filled with cards, potions to drink, character abilities to tap, and even this neutral tie called Shi's intervention to manage. So be warned, analysis paralysis can definitely happen, which really sells how this game is not just a silly fantasy romp. It's full of interesting decisions on how to manage the many parts of your character. We got to sink many hours into Euthia, but we still aren't sure about balance yet. We felt like it was too good to go for essence right away because trying to get them is not an action and their abilities are extremely swingy. This +8 from this Earth Elemental basically guarantees us to kill any tier 1 monster. This even made killing this boss monster, this dragon, Furuga, much easier than expected. So is this intentional on the elements being this strong? Or maybe we're just optimizing too hard or not chilling out and doing enough quests? Then for the classes, we felt that the 2 mages fell behind everyone else because they started out with less health. Everyone else is more likely to fight one more battle without having to go heal and are less likely to die. And then they can start the progression of eventually leveling up faster. This means they can have a solid lead that might never get jumped because there's no catch-up mechanics in the game. But mages might have more to gain with their multi-layered kits. We only played them once for the shorter scenarios, so really not conclusive here. Sure, okay, you got me. I'm kind of tryharding here. See, this game technically has a winner and it's competitive, but you don't really play this game with that competitive mindset. You play for the progression of this fantasy system and just be immersed in what's going on here, all in this big treasure chest. Even with initial exploring, there's just so much randomness on what gets flipped, and maybe someone will just get a couple lucky treasure finds for free. Euthia, Torment of Resurrection just constantly has us thinking of old school RPG, and you didn't play those for interaction anyways. The progression can be straight up addicting as you get totally curious with what each character can do, and then actually use those upgrades in a sprawling world. Upgrade this character ability, maximize damage there for a new axe there, flip some elemental essence there, and now you've gone from killing spiders to dragons all within a sitting without having to boot up a computer. If you decide to pick this up, make it 2 boxes, because we really don't recommend buying this without this legendary 2 add-on box that gives you all these organizers. Without these organizers, we would actually dock at least a point from this tentative score.
How many tokens can one game have? Oh yeah. How many tokens? With all that, oh my god. Unboxing for at least like 40 minutes. And we still have this giant stack that hasn't seemed to go anywhere.
I hate everything.
And this is the carnage so far.
One more thing, there's an optional app for Euthia available. This basically acts as a monster die roller, automating their use of guard tokens and helping you keep track of phases and elementals. You will still need the entire game and all the cards in front of you, especially for random monster selection. This app doesn't do that. My personal score for Euthia is going to be a 5 out of 10. I have an okay average time with it. Years ago, when my dad purchased the family PC, I spent hours playing this game called Fate. Oh my goodness gracious, this game just addicted me so hard with the progression. You went through dungeons, leveling up your character, buying items and armor, slotting in gems. Yeah, this sounds a lot like Euthia, right? So games like Fate, and later on for me on the DS with Dungeon Explorer, just filled my childhood with constant fantasy progression. So is that fantasy progression for me in a board game? I can't say the scope on a table ended up being a good fit for me, but you know, I was really curious while playing this game throughout. Okay, so let's back up. The setup and takedown just feel like an utter chore for me. There's just so many pieces that have to be taken out, which are actually helping to give that RPG feel of just so much wonder and delight later on. But you know what? Euthia actually felt too easy for me after my first game when we figured out that, oh, you should get these essences. And then once you get the essences, well, combat feels really nice initially because it's easy, and then it just keeps being so easy, and it's in a strange space. A very common one was reducing the monster to 1 die with an air essence, which works, but feels kind of wonky and dirty to me to always be able to do that. Also, the monsters don't really have as much flavor as I would like. They all mostly just have more health or more damage, or at coolest, reduce your die roll. This leads to multiplayer for me losing some steam mid-game, where I'm past the initial cool upgrades, the map is all revealed, and I'm just too strong killing tier 2s, but not quite there to kill tier 3s yet. Turns are slower, where everyone is taking a while to think because of the ever-increasing map movement options. See, I'm normally a competitive player, but I just don't really feel competitiveness in this game with the progression. So while I want points, I don't really want to screw over my friends from their fun progression. And then these silver and gold cards just end up being kinda useless for me. The game suffers from the complicated player board syndrome, where I want to focus so hard on my board and my opponents have complicated boards themselves. And at some point, I'm like, yeah, sure dude, you tap your abilities. Once we hit Reputation 15, everyone has such crazy abilities that I can't keep track of it all. I can't deny it though, there's that magic of just going to trade and buying and selling a ton of things that brings me to my feet. And this aesthetic is beautiful and really gets me excited for new tile flips. I'm visiting Dragon Slayer towers to buy dragon blades and shiny boots to speed across the map, all while stealing from merchants for fun, and this is somehow in a board game in a box. And so, for a solo game, I would gravitate towards this a lot harder if it just had less stuff. These things, these could easily be cut at least in half and I would get more enjoyment out of not having to set them up and fiddle with all these cards. Thanks to our patrons for making videos like this possible. We got Manuel G, Brian C, Clifford H, Aaron W, Max B, Roy, Jeremy MC, Charlie P, Quinton S, Sam S, Travis R, Evan Y, Vons K, Ryan D, Jennifer L, Matt G, Piers Z, Spinner 71, Ryan J, Brad G, TML period, Mark A, James M, Evan B, Charles B Jr., Josh J, Bassbar, Rono, Sophie, Reiner Z, Colin Allen, Hunter T, Pearson B, Omar F, MY, Ethan P, Bradley J, John C, Galvin V, Dirk S, Essex Co, Alex L, Rob R, Sando 22, Dave F, Josh R, Pat, Cyril C, Il Wayne, Kyle M, Amir H, and Right Left Spin. We also got 2 Mad Lads cardboard. We got ZL and Jeff L. We got that guy right there. We also got our Mad Lady cardboard. We got Amy. So yeah, remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And this was Euthia, Torment of Resurrection, where actually resurrecting is actually not that bad of a thing in this game.